Good morning. My name is Ala McCoy. I am Director of Startup Support at the University of Maryland's Ventures. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone who joined us today for the next installment in Startup Fundamentals Workshop Series, both live webinar audience and those watching the recorded version on our Startup UMD YouTube channel. This series is offered by Ventures at the University of Maryland College Park. To everyone attending the live session, please feel free to submit questions using the Q&A function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. And we will answer these questions at the end of the presentation. This session is recorded and will be posted on our Startup UMD YouTube channel, and you may submit your questions anonymously if you would like to do so. At the end of the session, you will also have an opportunity to raise your hand and ask your question live via the microphone. So today, we will cover National Strategy for Advanced Manufacturing, released by the White House on October 7th, 2022, so very recent. And I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker who will discuss this very important strategy, Dr. Saeed Jahanmir, Assistant Director for Federal Partnerships at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Advanced Manufacturing National Program Office. Thank you so much for your expertise and for spending time with us today to help us understand this very important strategy. The microphone is all yours. I will turn my camera off and sound off, but it's all you, but I am right here and I will be monitoring the Q&A function. Please do keep submitting questions. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Ala. Really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me to give you a presentation on what we have been doing over the past 2 or 3 years in developing a national strategy for advanced manufacturing. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And as Ala said, if you have any questions during the presentation, please put it in the Q&A, and then we will definitely get to those. This strategy was developed by the Subcommittee on Advanced Manufacturing, which is part of the Committee on Technology, and Committee on Technology is part of the National Science and Technology Council at the White House. And just to give you an overview, the National Science and Technology Council has about 30 different subcommittees and groups. Each one is focused on a different important technology area, and the reports from the National Science and Technology Council, NSTC, are published by the Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House. And so if you have any interest in other policy areas, technology areas with respect to policy, you can go to the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. So let me start by saying why manufacturing? What is important about manufacturing?
Dr. Jahanmir, sorry to interrupt you. We don't see your presentation. If you meant to share the slides now, we don't see them.
Oh, you don't see them at all?
No.
So let me see what happened here. Let me go back to the share. Okay, do you see that now?
Yes, yep, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries, thank you.
All right, let me see, live trans, okay. Very good, you still see everything?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yeah, first, why manufacturing? Why is manufacturing important? Manufacturing essentially creates energy security, economic security, competitiveness, and also it's a very important issue for national security. And manufacturing is a very large component of our GDP and also employs more than 10, 12% of our workforce directly. And if you think about the indirect effect of manufacturing employment, for example, other services and other activities that we need for manufacturing, one can claim that manufacturing actually employs directly or indirectly at least 20 to 25% of the workers. And so when we think about manufacturing, we also have to think about, as I said, jobs and also imports and exports, and we have to think about talent and so forth. Economists say that there are four T's for economic development. These four T's are technology, talent, trade, and taxes. You need technologies. You need new technology. You need a talented workforce that can take advantage of this new technology. Then you need some tax structure to incentivize companies to actually work on these technologies. Then, of course, you have to export the products that are made. So you need to have a good balance between these four T's of economic development. What has happened over the past several years, the past couple of decades, we saw a very large drop of manufacturing employment in about starting year about 2000. We lost almost 33% of our manufacturing workforce. We lost a lot of manufacturing uh, to overseas. And then the trend has started to be changed starting in 2010, and it started to go up. Of course, there was a slight reduction during the pandemic, but now it's coming back up again. But it's in no way it has reached the numbers that we had in the 1990s. The other problem, aside from employment, is exports. When we look at the uh, imports from other countries into the US, and if we only look at advanced technology products, the imports have been increasing almost steadily every year. But the problem is that although our exports have been increasing, the imports are much, much higher than our exports. And of course, from an economic point of view, we would like to have this reversed if possible. We like to have more exports than imports. So we need new technologies, we need innovation, we need new talent, we need new um, basically some new policies to be able to um, continue the growth of the economy. This is often referred to as industrial innovation policy. An industrial innovation policy basically is a way that the government plays a role in various sectors of the economy in fostering innovation and technology development. Our country is well positioned in international indices, for example, in innovation, in competitiveness, and entrepreneurship. And we are very strong in creating strong companies on information technology, biopharma, for example. And of course, we have always been, since the 1950s, we have been very, very strong, and we've had a very strong focus on basic research. However, we've had a problem in transitioning basic research into later stages of development, scaling the technologies, and implementing those technologies through manufacturing to new products. And this is an area we have lost a lot of ground in the past, especially in the past 20 years. The standard model for our country has been that federal government supports basic research, and then we expect companies and businesses to take the result of these basic research and move them up to commercialization. There are a lot of discussions that says that industrial policy, industrial innovation policy, should include a government role not only on basic research, but also in later stage development and implementation of technology um, innovations. For the past 2 years, there's been discussion at the White House. For example, the former National Economic Council director talked about modern American industrial strategy, and essentially saying that relying on private industry on its own will not mobilize investment necessary to achieve our core economic and national security interests. And so, because of some of these discussions, we need to have a clear national strategic plan for advanced manufacturing. We need to address global competition to revitalize the manufacturing sector, increase the resilience of the US supply chains and national security, and train Americans for jobs of the future, and of course, invest in R&D. And of course, you have seen over the past couple of years, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw that our supply chain, especially in manufacturing, has been very weak. We saw that many parts of the supply chain, many products that we need for our successful manufacturing operations come from overseas. And not only they come from overseas, but often they come from countries that we cannot really trust, and countries that could control and stifle the flow of goods internationally. So, with this in mind, it is important for us to have a strategy to grow the economy, to create high quality jobs. And of course, these days, we also need to worry about enhanced environmental sustainability. We need to address climate change. We need to address the strengthening of supply chains. And of course, national security and healthcare are also very important issues. So these are basically the background information that we used when we were thinking about developing this national strategy. And of course, to paint for you a bigger picture, the Biden-Harris administration has been focusing very much on manufacturing. There's been a series of executive orders on supply chains. There was the American Rescue Plan with respect to COVID that did emphasize manufacturing. There has been executive orders on advancing biotechnology and biomanufacturing. And of course, several months ago, we saw a big CHIPS and Science Act of 2022 that passed both the House and the Senate and signed by the president to bring semiconductor chip manufacturing back to the country as much as we can. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, all have very strong components of manufacturing and climate change issues. And of course, the Build Back Better and other executive orders and legislations all have components that deal with manufacturing. So I said at the beginning that this strategy was developed by the Subcommittee on Advanced Manufacturing. Our subcommittee was developed by the Bipartisan Competes Act back in 2012 with essentially two functions: to develop a national strategic plan every 4 years and to review and coordinate federal government advanced manufacturing R&D. These are our two functions. Currently, we have membership in our subcommittee from by 11 different federal agencies, departments, including Commerce, Defense, Energy, Labor, State, Transportation, Education, EPA, Health and Human Services, NASA, NSF, SBA, USDA, and of course also the Executive Office of the President. We issued the latest version of the National Strategy for Advanced Manufacturing uh, in October 2022, and that's what we will be talking about today. When we started working on the strategy, we wanted to get input from the public and from other organizations and industry, academia. And we did this by publishing a request for information. And that request for information was published by the Office of Science and Technology Policy. We received extensive input from the public, including from technical societies, companies, some individuals, organizations, and many, many others. In addition to getting written input, we had 14 roundtables, and of course, mostly virtual during the past couple of years, with industry, large and small companies, with academia, state, regional organizations, professional societies. And altogether, we received input from nearly 1,000 individuals and organizations. The inputs basically ask questions. What are some technology areas that our advanced manufacturing national strategy should include? And we ask questions related to education and workforce development. We ask questions related to public-private partnerships and so forth. We analyzed all the input and all the information. We assembled a large number of subject matter experts from within the government. We had almost 100 experts from various agencies within the government. And we developed a vision and three broad national goals. And throughout this process, we always kept in mind the result of the request for information, all the information that we had gathered. The vision we selected is United States leadership in advanced manufacturing to grow the economy, create jobs, enhance environmental sustainability, address climate change, strengthen supply chains, ensure national security, and improve healthcare. These are all very, very important issues that we kept in mind when we started thinking about technology areas and workforce development and supply chain. We selected three broad national goals: develop and implement advanced manufacturing technologies, grow the advanced manufacturing workforce, and build resilience into manufacturing supply chains and ecosystems. Now, these are not independent goals. These three goals are very much interrelated, and we need all these three goals to be able to um, improve the economic condition of the country. Each goal is divided into several objectives, and each objective is divided into several priorities, which I will now address and go over each of the goals, objectives, and priorities. Goal 1, develop and implement advanced manufacturing technologies. We selected 5 objectives, and these 5 objectives included: 1, enable clean and sustainable manufacturing to support decarbonization. Accelerate manufacturing innovation for microelectronics and semiconductors. Implement advanced manufacturing in support of the bioeconomy. Develop innovative materials and processing technologies, and lead the future of smart manufacturing. All of these areas are very important with respect to advanced manufacturing technologies. So I will now say a little bit about each of these objectives, a little bit more detail. The priorities under the clean and sustainable manufacturing included decarbonization of manufacturing processes, clean energy manufacturing technologies, and sustainable manufacturing and recycling. Now, there are specific description under each of these priorities, which I will not go through that in this presentation. But this strategy, the report, is available through the White House, and I will share with you at the end of the talk the link and the QR code where you can, excuse me, download this report and look at the details. Under microelectronics and semiconductors, which is also very much related to the CHIPS and Science Act, the priorities include nanomanufacturing of semiconductors and electronics, semiconductor materials design and fabrication, semiconductor packaging, and heterogeneous design. Under bioeconomy, excuse me, the priorities include biomanufacturing, agriculture, forest and food processing, biomass processing and conversion, and pharmaceuticals and healthcare products. Under materials processing, of course, there is high performance materials design and processing, additive manufacturing, critical materials, and in-space manufacturing. These are all very, very important topics, and we need new technologies to be able to stay competitive with other nations around the globe. Under smart manufacturing, we need to focus on digital manufacturing, artificial intelligence, and how it can be implemented in manufacturing, human-centered technology adoption, for example, robotics, and of course, very important that we need to pay very particular attention to cybersecurity. And of course, when it comes to cybersecurity, since most of our manufacturing operations are now being digitized, there's a flow of information through the cloud and through internet. Manufacturing product designs are being shared through the internet to other facilities. It's very, very important that we have a very clear set of standards how we can develop cybersecurity in manufacturing operations. So now if we go to goal number 2, which is growing the advanced manufacturing workforce. Once we develop these new technologies, then the question is who is going to implement these technologies? We need a well educated and trained workforce ready to take advantage of these new technologies. When we look at the predictions, when we analyze the current manufacturing workforce, and if we look into the future with these new technologies, there are estimates that very, very soon, within the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, we need an additional 2 or 3 million uh, new, educated, and well trained workers. So the question is where do we find these and how do we train them? So we picked three objectives under the workforce goal. One, we need to expand and diversify the advanced manufacturing talent pool. We need to develop, scale, and promote advanced manufacturing education and training. And we need to strengthen connections between employers and educational organizations. Under goal one, we need to promote awareness of advanced manufacturing careers, engage underrepresented communities, and address social and structural barriers for underserved groups so that we can attract them to manufacturing technologies. As a part of education and training, we need to incorporate advanced manufacturing into foundational STEM education. As a country, we spend a lot of resources in STEM education, but we need to strengthen that link between the primary STEM education and manufacturing to get the young students interested in manufacturing technologies. We need to modernize the career technical education for advanced manufacturing, and we need to expand and disseminate new learning technologies and practices. There are many new technologies that have been developed for training in recent years. We need to expand those and use those new technologies. And of course, it's very important that we strengthen the connection between employers and educational organizations. Education has to be combined with what the industry needs and has to train our future workforce so that they are ready to work in manufacturing operations. We need to expand work-based learning and apprenticeships, and we need to promote industry recognized credentials and certifications. And again, when you read the report, there are specific statements and specific action items under each of these national priorities that I'm describing. After we develop new technologies and we have a new workforce to take advantage of these technologies and make them into realities, we need a resilient manufacturing supply chain. We need a supply chain that can actually bring all the different components we need for manufacturing of specific products. And this supply chain has to be resilient. The supply chain has to be visible. And this supply chain has to be such that we can prevent the problems that we had with the supply chain over the past 2 or 3 years. There are three objectives that we selected under supply chain goal. Enhance supply chain interconnections, expand efforts to reduce supply chain vulnerabilities, and strengthen and revitalize advanced manufacturing ecosystem. To enhance the supply chain interconnections, we need to foster collaboration within supply chains. The supply chain, pieces of the supply chain should not and cannot be independent. They have to collaborate with each other. We need innovation for digital transformation of supply chain. The information should be available. The information should be available through digital means and software. So when there is an interruption in the supply chain, we can very quickly develop a strategy to fix that problem. We need to trace the information and products along the supply chain so that we know at any given time where the different components are. We need to increase the visibility of the supply chain, where everything is coming from, and improve risk management for the supply chain. If the supply chain is disrupted for a particular component, how can we quickly get the same product from somewhere else to reduce the risks? And we need to have a supply chain that's very agile and can be corrected very quickly during interruptions. And of course, all of this again comes together through an ecosystem. We need to strengthen and revitalize the manufacturing ecosystem. We need to promote new business formations and growth, support small and medium-sized manufacturers. 98% of manufacturing companies in our country are small and medium-sized companies which have less than 500 employees. We need to assist these companies in technology transition and modernization, and we need to build and strengthen regional manufacturing networks. And of course, a lot of these things needs to be done through public-private partnerships. Government cannot do all of these alone. Industry cannot do all of these alone. We need a very clear partnership between industry, academia, and government to be able to achieve these objectives and priorities. As we discussed, all these priorities, objectives, and the directions, each of the agencies and departments of the federal government agreed that they will participate in certain areas that are consistent with their mission. And in this table, you can see that almost all of our agencies that are involved in manufacturing technologies and workforce development and education, they are participating in different objectives and different priorities that are included in the strategy. So what are the next steps? The national strategy was developed and released in October. And by the way, it was released on the National Manufacturing Day on October 6th. Since then, we have been socializing the goals, objectives, and priorities with government, industry, and academia in presentations and forums such as this one. We have developed an interagency implementation team to develop a plan for implementation so that we can proceed with these goals and objectives so that this will not be just a document that is published by the government, but we want to actually achieve the objectives that are laid out in this plan. And we will be tracking progress toward achieving these goals through coordination within federal government program and through collaboration with industry and academia. Finally, I want to make sure we have plenty time for any questions and a good discussion. I have listed my email address in here. If anyone has any direct questions, please feel free to contact me. And the report can be obtained by scanning this QR code. It is available through the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. With that, I want to thank you for your attention. And Alla, I'm going to turn the meeting to you for questions.
Thank you so much. This has been very informative and a great overview of the policy. That's good to know that the White House administration is thinking about these priorities in a very strategic way, very much forward-looking way. I think it's really, really important. So why don't we open the floor to questions? So if anybody has a question, you can either type it in the chat or in the Q&A function, or at this point, you can also click on the button that says raise hand, and I can unmute your microphone. You can ask your question that way. So while people are thinking, oh, here's the first question. What kind of resources are available through this initiative? For example, SBIR grants?
Well, that's a very good question. And of course, in the federal government, funding comes from appropriations, and we are hoping that through this appropriation process, see, let me move this. Through the appropriation process during the next 3 or 4 years, there will be sufficient amount of funding within the federal government. And of course, as you have seen, the recent, or let's say in the past 6 months, big bipartisan acts such as CHIPS and Science Act, the Infrastructure Bill, and Inflation Reduction Act, and so forth, they all had large sums of money, some authorized and some appropriated for these activities. And you ask about SBIR, and of course, as the amount of funding available for research that is funded by department agencies increases, the pool of money available for SBIR also increases. Because SBIR is about 3% of the research expenditures of an agency. So I expect that over the next couple of years, the amount of funding available for SBIR will increase. And of course, STTR as well. They're both connected.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? So while people are typing up questions, I have a question about, you talked about expanding the workforce training programs. Does that mean that, there will be funding and other resources available to build new programs, either at the community college or four-year colleges, or what is the strategy or vision behind that?
Very good question. First of all, there are a lot of resources and needs for a workforce development certification program at local level. So we expect that there will be a very good collaboration between local governments and federal government in developing these new programs. There are also extensive programs that started about a year ago through Department of Commerce, EDA, the EDA agency, for local and regional workforce and economic development. And we are discussing within our implementation teams what types of programs require new funding that needs to be requested in President's budget request in coming years, so that we have sufficient funding to be able to move these programs forward. And of course, as you know, federal government's funding comes from Congress. And so we have to wait and see how things develop over the next couple of years with respect to appropriations of funds for the federal budget. Okay, I see a question here. What are the overlaps between this program and the NSF Advanced Manufacturing Directorate goals? Excellent question. NSF was one of the agencies that participated in the development of the strategic plan that I shared with you. And of course, NSF's activities is primarily, or has been primarily, in basic research. As a part of the CHIPS and Science Act, the science part of the bill has developed and authorized a new part of NSF called TIP program, Technology Program. And so NSF is also assisting not only in the basic research aspects of manufacturing, but also in implementation and transition of new technologies. So NSF's role in this process is very, very important.
Thank you. Any other questions? And like I mentioned, you can raise your hand and I can unmute your microphone if that's easier than typing. I see a raised hand. All right, Herbot, you are live.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about asking all these questions. So I was wondering if there are any technical objectives. For example, in the next 5 years, we need to achieve this capability. In the next 10 years, we need to achieve this other capability. Are there any specific concrete goals that we can reference in our other attempts or activities?
Yeah, the details are in the report. The detailed activities that need to be accomplished and detailed technologies that needs to be developed, they are written in the report. And I did not want to go through, all the details in this presentation. And generally, the report or this plan that we put together every 4 years is for the types of activities we need to do for the next 4 years. But of course, we realize that some of these that we have laid out actually takes much longer to do. It might be a 10-year plan. So all of these activities that we have listed in the report are really for the future and not for current, I would say, implementation. But these are ideas that we need to do over the next 4 to 10 years to move the country forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And please do keep asking questions if you have any more. Well, I don't see any more questions. If you do have them later, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Jahanmir directly. He listed his email address here. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Jahanmir, for spending the time with us and your expertise and the vision. This is extraordinarily important for everyone in this country. And again, thank you so much for the time. And all the expertise. As a reminder, I will post the video to our Startup PMD YouTube channel where you can watch this again. And you can also follow the link on the slide or the or the QR code to access the actual policy where you can a strategy where you can read and understand the details.
Yeah, very good. And thank you very much, Ella. And thanks you everyone for participating. Yeah, please do contact me if you have any questions.
All right. Thank you so much again.
All right.
Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye bye.